It's 3 a.m. everyone. The demon hour is at hand, which means it's time to share some stories of horror, mystery, and dread. The games we play this deep into the night can vary depending on the mood, but for now, I'd like to introduce my favorite twist on all of those top 3 whatever videos piling up like leaves outside. This is a game called Truth, Myth, and Lie. It's very simple. I'm going to present 3 stories to you with a unifying theme or idea. One of them is true, one is a myth, and one is a complete lie I may have written myself. Your challenge is determining which story is fact, legend, and falsehood before I reveal their natures. Think you're up to the challenge? Let's get started. Once in a while, someone may be unfortunate enough to bear witness to a fight in public. Maybe you've seen it yourself. Someone getting bloodied and bruised, scraped and beaten, or perhaps you've just caught sight of a person passing out. All those people have been alive though. No worries, they're going to be just fine. A bit of medical treatment, some hefty ambulance fines, and they're on their way. But how about those moments you've seen a crowd gather nearby and felt the deep animal fear that someone has just died? In the middle of all those people, another human being laying on the ground, the life gone from their eyes. Struck dead in a flash, or worse, dead for a while and just discovered by the living. You can pretend it may never happen to you, but the truth is, people have caught sight of others leaving their bodies behind in public since civilization became a trend. Do you think you'd have the guts to approach a still figure and determine whether its heart was still beating? That's just what employees at a big publishing firm were asking themselves back in 2001. Procedure had been running smoothly at the building over the course of 5 days as the workers ran their proofreading tasks with not a single absence or late punch-in. Early one Saturday morning, a manager at the firm received a call from the weekend office cleaner who wanted to know why there was a single man still working in the closed business. Upon hearing from the manager that no employees ought to be at their desks, the cleaner went to check on the man, only to find he was dead. An autopsy later determined that he had suffered sudden cardiac arrest 5 days ago during his Monday shift. The man had sat in the office, lifeless, for the entire work week, and none of the employees had realized that he was no longer truly with them. When asked by police why this major oversight had occurred, the manager of that particular office said, "George was always the first guy in every morning and the last to leave every night. No one found it unusual if he was in the same position all the time and didn't say anything. He was always absorbed in his work and pretty much kept to himself." Our next story of bodies just hanging around comes from the year 1976. A TV crew had arrived at an amusement park to prepare the set for a Halloween episode in which their main character ran through a haunted house. Part of the decorations included a hanging mannequin. While setting up the prop, its handler accidentally broke off an arm, which was troublesome enough on its own. Things took a turn for the horrifying when the crew member examined the breakpoint and discovered a human bone sticking out. Without even realizing it, the crew had purchased an actual corpse to display as a hanged man on set, and the corpse had just crumbled in someone's hands. And while most cases of live human flesh interacting with dead bodies happens in more private settings, our final story involves a very public display of affection. In 1994, security staff at an Arizona mall were alerted to what many considered a pretty mundane affair: a young mother breastfeeding her infant. The issue with this stemmed from the fact that it was taking place on a very public bench in the aisle of an indoor mall in sight of all manner of people passing by. Though reluctant, the security officer approached what was described as a rather frazzled-looking woman and began asking her to take her child somewhere more private. After a moment of being ignored, the officer asked more sternly, and the woman suddenly detached her child and began to stand up. Now with the child's face in full view, the officer realized there was a far worse problem. This infant wasn't capable of eating anything it was fed. The man called another security guard who helped restrain the woman after the first guard asked to see the child, prompting the woman to become violent. Police arrived quickly to take the mother into custody and bring the infant to the morgue. After the child's corpse was examined, it was determined the 2-month-old had been dead for 16 hours and died as a result of crib suffocation. Think you have the facts of all those stories figured out? Let's see how well you did. In the case of the man found dead at work, we're looking at a very plausible myth. This story has been around for a while and sometimes changes its location and the occupation of the man in question. A lot of news republishing agents have sworn by the story, or stories like it, even claiming a case where an employee's corpse was left to rot for more than 2 weeks. And while the man in the publishing firm may not have actually existed and probably wasn't left there for 5 days, this kind of thing actually does happen. Such is the case of Rebecca Wells in 2011, a compliance auditor for the Los Angeles County Internal Services. Rebecca had died at her desk on a Friday afternoon and was found the next day by a security guard, marking her dead overtime hours at 24. And while our friend George had been surrounded by coworkers in his story, Rebecca had been alone in a line of empty cubicles, having returned after hours on Friday to finish up work from the day before. 5 whole days of being dead in the workplace with coworkers all around? I don't think that's very likely, but as we've just seen, finding an employee hanging around past clockout time without meaning to has not only happened, but can be considered totally plausible. In the case of the real hanged man, this story turns out to be absolutely true. The TV crew was on set for an episode of The $6 Million Man, and the body belonged to Elmer McCurdy, a young train robber from 1911. He had attempted to outgun the men who tried to apprehend him and was shot dead for his efforts. After no family members claimed his body, the embalmer set up Elmer's corpse in the back room of his funeral home as a morbid attraction to those who had heard of the train robber. From there, he was taken by a pair of men claiming to be his brothers who were just carnival running con men. They held onto him for a while until selling the prop, starting a long chain of the grave robber moving from sideshow to sideshow until finally landing in the hands of a TV set crew member. And this wasn't the only case of Hollywood getting their hands on live dead people. As part of what many know to be the Poltergeist curse, the prop team for the famous horror movie Poltergeist ended up buying actual human skeletons which were thrown into scenes with the actors in the movie's climax. And by process of elimination, that leaves our story of the breastfeeding mother as a lie, and one I'm proud to call my own bit of fiction. Did I have you going there for a moment? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to find out what your guesses were for any of these stories. If you enjoyed this bit of fact, fun, and fiction, hit the like button and subscribe for more games of truth, myth, and lie. That's all for tonight's festivities. Thanks again for joining me in the dark this evening during the most mystical of hours. I'm Nick Nocturne, and like that odd coworker who never seems to get up from their cubicle, you'll be seeing me again real soon. Sleep tight.